So for you, obviously you've been a psychologist for 25 years. What was it initially that like made you want to do that? What did you always feel like it was a calling?
Yeah, definitely. So from a very young age, I didn't quite know all of the details, but from, a very young age, I knew that I was going to have lots of suffering in my life. And this isn't to say that you have to have lots of suffering to be able to help other people, but I just knew that I was going to sample a lot of experiences that would be very difficult to handle, so that I would then be able to go forward and help people to help and heal themselves. So that was always there in the background. It was like a program.
Yeah.
And, it was just the case that everyone would come to me with their problems from a small age as well. And so it's kind of who I am. There were lots of paranormal events that happened in my childhood.
Okay.
And I got to my teenage, and some of which frightened me. And I didn't have anybody to support me or to talk me through these things. So I, in my teenage years, I kind of disconnected from a lot of that. So it's not like I thought, right, I'm always going to be a psychologist.
Yeah.
It was almost like it was destined to be, but there's that kind of free will that I could have gone in another way, but I believe it would have brought me back. So I was actually going to do a legal degree, a law degree.
Interesting.
Yeah. So my dad was a sergeant major in the army, and I had this kind of idea, okay, I'm gonna go in the army legal corps, they pay for your degree, that kind of thing. I went off to university and I did my degree in psychology, and even then I wasn't fully on the path because I went into leadership development, change management. I worked at Reuters, and it was
more of like a HR,
corporate HR
in a corporate space. That's where psychology fitted.
Yeah. And while I was there, again, it started happening again. So I started kind of coaching people. I was only young. I was only in my early 20s. And I started to regain the awareness that I was here to help people to help and heal themselves. And I kind of thrived at seeing the impact I was having on people. And it wasn't part of my job. It kind of evolved into that. And then I healed myself from a pituitary tumour, which we may well come to. And it was that moment that I realised, actually, I need to reshape my life and go in a different path. So then I retrained. I did hypnotherapy, NLP, life coaching, and then I went on to do the doctoral training to become a chartered counselling psychologist. So
amazing. And when you think about your childhood and kind of, I've seen the kind of work that you do and all the things like your amazing book, which I haven't had a chance to read yet, but I've kind of done my research around it. You've kind of mentioned and like touched on that there were certain events that would happen, or certain energies, certain emotions that as a child you felt like you understood what was not being said. You felt what was not being exposed by other people. And is that for you where you really started to, like, when you look back, was that your psychic ability just in a childhood format?
Yeah, it was kind of like I was in a world that didn't allow for that, but actually it was who I always was.
Yeah.
And I did express it at times, because the thing is, I'm sure you know this, when you don't have an awareness of the fact that not everybody is the same as you when you're growing up. And so I wasn't aware that the things that I was saying, knowing, doing, because the knowing is the key here, right? It's not just feeling, it's knowing, was different. It was just the case of, so even as an adult, so I'll come back to when I was younger, but even as an adult, it's only a few years ago that I realised that not everybody can know things about people's lives from a photograph. I didn't know. I thought that was normal. And it was my eldest daughter. She'd come home, she'd show me some photographs. This is when she was at school. And I said, how is like one of her friends, one of her, how is he doing? And she went, what do you mean? I said, well, he's got trouble with drinking and drugs and stuff already, hasn't he? And, I'm just wondering how he is. And she was like, Mum, how do you even know that? I've never said anything to you. No, but you can just tell, can't you? And she was like, what do you mean you can just tell? I'm like, you can just tell by looking at the photo. And she was like, no, Mum, you can't tell what's going on in someone's life by looking at a photo. So even now it's still being revealed at how different some of the things that I experience are to other people. But as a child, certain things would happen. So when I was about 7, my granddad died, my mum's dad, and I was quite close to him. And I said to my mum at the time that her brother, my uncle, would die that year of a broken heart. And she kind of looked at me.
And you were 7?
Yeah, I was about 7, 6 or 7. But I just knew it. I knew that he was going to die of a broken heart. What I didn't know was actually he was waiting for a triple heart bypass. So I suppose in my language as a child, I'm thinking a broken heart, but it obviously literally is a broken heart.
Yeah.
And he did. He died about 9 months later. And, you know, I didn't know. And a similar situation a few years later, again with my mum, with her sister, we'd gone round to her house, and I knew nothing about, you don't as a child, IVF, people struggling to have children. I didn't even know that she was trying to have children. And I had this sense of this little girl with blonde hair, and I felt that she was called Sally Ann. And I said to my mum, "Oh, Sally Ann's coming." Like, Jesus. And my mum was like, "What do you, we actually got the bus there. My mum didn't drive, and we were on the bus." And she was like, "What do you mean?" Anyway, not long after that, I didn't realise she was, you know, struggling to have children. I ended up with 2 cousins, Sally and Annie.
Stop it.
Both blonde. Yeah. But so they were the things, but they didn't mean anything. They weren't significant. Obviously, as an adult, they really are significant.
And as a child, the adults around you, so obviously like both of those occasions where you've said something to your mum in both scenarios, what was her reaction to it? How did she kind of process that, and how did she show up for you?
She just didn't really acknowledge it or say anything. So it wasn't some major, like, oh, you know, don't be so silly.
She was right.
There was just nothingness.
Wow.
I mean, I think my mum did have some experiences herself, but it just wasn't really acknowledged or said. There was no support. There was no kind of words that. It was just something I said, something that happened, and then we just kind of moved on.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because we spoke about this on a previous episode, but when children have like vivid imaginations, or, you know, find ways to say things that feel they're so intuitive, and then they say things and you think, how the hell did you even know
Where did that come from?
Yeah. And I think that it's so sad that a lot of us as parents maybe then either shut it down because we're scared of it and think they're doing something wrong, and we can't understand it, we can't see it, so we don't know. But actually, these are really beautiful gifts that children have. And I wonder if everyone has the ability to tap into this space and this spiritual space, but the world's kind of shut us down a little bit from accessing it because we don't understand it. And that's sort of when you talk about the paranormal side of things, and like being a child, that's really scary. And those experiences are terrifying. And then obviously we have the media of horror movies and paranormal activity and all of that then you kind of close yourself off from it because you're so terrified. But you mentioned you had some. What was that?
Yeah,
what were they
I did. And what you're saying there is interesting, because what we're fed with, that kind of forms our template of our belief system and what we will or won't experience in our lives. Now, think about that for a moment. If there's that level of terror or fear, or, you know, like obviously a lot of children do end up watching scary movies, don't they? That puts your vibrational frequency in a place of fear.
Yeah.
You can't access any of that information from that vibrational frequency. So already it's preventing you from experiencing that in the first place.
Is it a case of like your nervous system, whatever's going on inside, is trying to protect you from something that you don't actually need to be protected from? Is that what you think it is? That why we do that? Why we shut down from accessing our spiritual gifts?
I just don't think the environment enables it.
Yeah.
Truly. I don't think it's nothing that we consciously choose to do, or even subconsciously, I don't think. I think actually we're primed from a very early age, kind of like we're saying, for this either to not exist, or you're going to then be, like you were kind of saying earlier, the odd one out, or punished in some way, or it's fearful and you don't want to go there. So, and you've got obviously the church. These things have been around for a very long time.
Yes, yeah.
But actually, truly, we all have, if one person can do it, then anyone and everyone can do it, right?
I completely agree.
And
completely agree.
We just don't know how to. We don't have the language for it. We don't have the education for it. We don't have the training for it. And yet it's all there if we start to delve into it. I mean, for myself, obviously I'm the psychic psychologist now. And as a chartered counselling psychologist, registered practitioner psychologist, you know, for me to come out as that,
Yes.
It felt like professional suicide.
Yep, I get that.
But I know how important it is to get this information across to people, because there is a whole load of science there. And actually, it wasn't really fully until I connected in with the science that I felt more comfortable with acknowledging that side and bringing it out.
Yeah, and embracing it. And something you just said so interesting with, this is like something that Joe Dispenza spoke about a lot, about how like he's a professional qualified doctor, a chiropractor, but he's got that medical qualification and that medical background. And when I think it was his book Supernatural, where he said, he actually talks about how he knew that the scientific community would not embrace what he was trying to tell the world and what he'd found out in his work and his practice. And he just had to be brave enough to not need their acknowledgement.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody's got to do it. And if you've got that calling, then you kind of know that you've got to step into that.
Yeah.
And it was exactly the same for me. It was that sense of, I could get struck off.
Yeah.
You know, I could be humiliated. You know, yeah, exactly. And I just thought, you know what, this is more important than that. And actually, it was in alignment with my path. And so I knew. In fact, I used to get called the female Dr. Joe. I didn't even know who he was. and literally in the space of 3 weeks, a number of different people kept saying, oh my God, like about my teachings and what I say, oh my God, you're the female Dr. Joe. And I'm like, who is this Dr. Joe?
Yes.
So I actually went along to one of his events and I was like, oh my goodness, he is literally speaking my language. He's saying every single thing that I talk about.
Yeah.
So I can understand now. But yeah, as a child.
And you can take that as full circle as well, because that's exactly how I feel about you. I'm like, this woman is speaking my language. This is a language that I can understand for the first time. Obviously, Joe Dispenza and, you know, people like that who've kind of been really pushing this for a really, really long time on a big stage. But they do come in a identity that I can't necessarily connect with. Whereas when I hear you talking about it, I'm like, wow, okay, this is my language. I understand this. And being intelligent, strong, educated women, we also know that the science is there to back it up. And that makes us feel a lot safer in exploring it.
Yeah.
And gives us that little, not that we need it, but gives us that little permission slip to be like, this is real.
Yeah.
Go for it. See what happens. Like, be so open to it. And I think that's such a magical gift to be able to awaken and like bring to life in someone.
Yeah.
And that sounds like that's absolutely what your purpose is as well, and in that process to heal and help people as well. But the paranormal stuff, let's get into that, because I feel like that is such a huge misconception.
Yeah.
What was your first experience? Can you remember how old you were and what it felt like?
So I'm uncertain of the age. I moved around a lot when I was younger. My dad was in the army, obviously. But I used to have this situation where it was like I could see the molecular structure of the environment I was in.
Wow.
That's kind of how I first became aware of it. And I was a bit freaked out about it, in all honesty, at the beginning. And I would be like I said, my mum doesn't drive, so I might be sat on a bus with my mum somewhere, and I'd start to feel this happening in my hands, like they'd start to feel warm, and I could feel these like, well, I didn't know how to describe it. And I remember saying it to my mum, and she didn't have a clue, you know, what I was talking about. And then I would start to notice things around people, kind of what we now know in people's auras, and I'd see blockages, and I'd say things like, oh, that person's got like a blockage in their head, you know. I now know I was kind of seeing like a tumour.
Yes, wow.
And I would just be kind of observing, in a sense, these things that were invisible and yet visible.
Yes.
And so that's really how things started. And when we're talking about the paranormal stuff, obviously it is quite paranormal to know things about situations. When I was, Roman Catholic upbringing, so, you know.
Interesting,
The body would be out in the living room. And so my granddad was there. And when we had to queue up, and you like kind of kiss them on, like I was 7, and it was like this cold. And yet I could see him kind of superimposed over, like he was still alive. And I could see him in the room, kind of watching everybody. And it was quite confusing. And I didn't actually say anything because I didn't really understand.
Have maybe the language. Or
I just didn't know. And I think it didn't scare me. I didn't feel anything then. The cold body wasn't very nice as a child.
Yeah, of course.
But then things would happen at home. So it kind of progressed from this seeing the atmosphere to seeing things in the atmosphere. So I'd kind of see like shadowy figures and things like that. I mean, I remember a little bit older and as a teenager, I was doing some like work experience with my mum, and it was really early in the morning, and we'd gone down, I was going down the stairs, and my mum and dad's bedroom was in front as you go down the stairs. And my dad was just standing in the doorway, just staring, not saying anything, just like looking at me, just there. And as we were walking up the road, I said to my mum, "What's wrong with Dad?" And she went, "What do you mean?" I said, "He was just standing in the doorway, just like staring at me, walking down the stairs." And she went, "What are you talking about?" I said, "He was just, your dad's been at work all night. Your dad's not home, he's at work." So I was like, okay, so who was that standing there? You know, there were lots of different things that I started to get fearful of, with like seeing images of beings near the bed, and just some quite freaky things. And so I very much shut down, and I believe it's the fear that was generated that actually, so you know, you've got your pituitary gland, which connects with your pineal gland, and that's the master gland that enables you to connect in vibrationally to things that are spiritual. Well, I actually had a pituitary tumour, and I truly believe, actually from healing it, that actually that was generated, a physical manifestation of the block that I had due to the fear of some of these experiences that I was having.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And we know how powerful the mind is. We know how powerful that is, but for it to actually manifest something really serious and physical, and then for you to be able to tap back into that and heal it yourself. What was that journey like? What was that process like?
Yeah, so that it's an interesting one, because actually that's the foundational experience that everything has grown on. Everything that I teach now has come from what I somehow managed to learn to do back in when I was like 21, 22. So prior to that had been that period of time, you know, I was at Reuters, I was very much in the logical mind, I would poo-poo.
So you're in corporate?
Yeah.
You're in,
Poo-poo anything.
Completely removed from the good stuff.
Yeah. Remind me to tell you about the paranormal experiences as an adult, a couple of them.
Oh, okay, we'll come back to that.
They'll be interesting.
Amazing.
So yeah, I was very, very poorly with this tumour, like really poorly. And I'd been given this medication that was horrendous. So I decided I just didn't want to take it. So I didn't. And
that's a really brave thing to do. A really brave thing to do. And it might not felt like it.
It didn't feel like it at the time.
No. Because because intuitively you knew it wasn't the right thing for you. But
well, I knew that wasn't. I didn't know how I was meant to heal it, or any of that at that point, or even that I could, or even that was a thing. But I just knew I shouldn't be taking this.
Yeah.
So my consultant obviously was like, "You need to take this," and I was like, "Just give me a bit of time."
Yeah.
So anyway, I was at Reuters, and there was this girl that worked for me. She came in. She was a temp, like admin temp. And this day she just said, "Oh, I didn't know her husband. I didn't even really know her very well." She said, "My husband said he feels he really needs to help you." I was like, "Okay, what do you mean?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, we've both just been on a Reiki healing course. Like they'd done Reiki 1 and 2, like a combined course. And he's just got this really strong sense that he's meant to help you." Okay, so long story short, I ended up going to their flat, and they did Reiki, both of them at the same time. And I was shut down.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my goodness," you know? And they were like, I was like, "Oh, what was your experience?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I felt really relaxed."
Yeah.
You know, you don't
just went into like people-pleasing mode.
Yeah, people-pleasing mode. And they said, "Oh, can you come back tomorrow?" And I'm thinking, "Oh, really?" But equally at the same time, I'm like, oh, these lovely people.
Got nothing to lose, have you?
I haven't, but it was more, again, I wanted to please them because they wanted to do it. They'd gone out of their way. They were kind enough to want to help. So kind of went along the next day. But I had kind of had an awareness that I was going to be different this time. And so this time I just kind of, I don't know, I chose somehow to connect in with them as this experience was happening energetically.
And what did that feel? Was that a case of just going in open-minded? Was that, I know it's so hard to explain.
It was a conscious act of something that I didn't really know what I was doing.
Yes, yes.
So it was kind of like I just dropped into my body and outside of my body.
Yes.
But no one had ever taught me or told me to do this. And I could sense their energy. And I could also sense other things in the room.
Yeah.
And I could feel more hands on me than their 4 hands. And then I started seeing these purple pulsating balls of energy kind of flowing in and out. And then I started seeing images from my childhood of things that I had experienced in terms of the energy and the, you know, things that I'd kind of pushed away. So it was kind of like I was gaining back my sight.
Wow.
And after the session, I went home and I did it again. I just decided to lie there and do what I did when I was there. And we were kind of almost like doing it in a collaboration in a sense. And then something, I don't even know, something said I needed to go to the bookshop. So I went to the bookshop and I bought Deepak Chopra's Quantum Healing. Didn't know who he was, didn't know what quantum even meant. I didn't know any of this. And I started reading Deepak Chopra's Quantum Healing and about, well, I've jumped a little bit. So what I'd actually been doing as well was visualizing.
Yeah.
And somehow I kind of ascended to a vibrational frequency whilst doing what I was doing that was enabling me to heal myself. And in doing so, like when I said I could see this healing happening. I had like the Pac-Man thing going through, and
Yeah.
And then I bought Deepak Chopra's Quantum Healing, and it started to give me a bit more of an understanding that actually you can actually do this. And anyway, within 5-6 weeks, I then had to go back to my consultant, and I didn't really know what I'd been doing, and I'd had all my blood tests, and it came back, and the levels of prolactin that the pituitary was secreting had gone down from 15,000 to less than 10. And all he could do was write through my notes, spontaneous recovery, question mark, exclamation.
So it was medically unexplained.
Yeah. And I told him what I'd been doing. And he was just kind of like, he didn't say much.
Yeah.
He was a professor.
Yeah.
And just wrote spontaneous recovery. Well, I mean, yeah, that could be an explanation, perhaps I had something to do with it.
100%.
Or,
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the power of the mind is so powerful, intensely powerful, that I think there's so many, when I look at, people in my life or people who I've come across, or even just in like the wider collective of people who are so chronically anxious, and then that leads to tumours or various things like that. And they might not even be aware of the fact that they are chronically anxious. It's just like their baseline. And then something awful happens, like they find out that they're ill or whatever, and then it's immediately, right, let's throw medication. And I think that there is absolutely, of course there is, like there's no denying the science or the medical side of things at all, but I think there's room for both.
Yeah.
And that's how
you've got to remember that medication has a frequency as well,
exactly.
in and of itself.
Yeah.
So I talk about the hierarchy of healing, which is what I was doing when you've got to look at each and every level of the self. So we've got a physical body, and we're in a physical environment. So we have to, first of all, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, hierarchy of healing, similar kind of concept. Yeah. So you have to look at your environment physically, your body physically, what's happening internally, externally, first of all. And you have to get that, in an optimal state in order for you to start to heal. And then you've got your emotional level of the self, which kind of links into that, because There's lots of research now that shows that your emotions, they produce biochemistry. That biochemistry influences the body. And then you're looking at the mental level of the self. And, you know, again, at a quantum level, we're looking at the thoughts, the feelings and the behaviors. They're all influencing the energetic vibrational frequency that is occurring within and around you. You know, now we are this far away, but at a subatomic level, in a quantum space, my energy will be influencing yours and yours will be influencing mine.
Yeah.
So we then move out into that energetic level of the self. And, you know, there's research as well with each of those different emotions, which your thoughts and your feelings are obviously impacting each other. You are at a different vibrational frequency. Dr. David Hawkins, he talks about, you know, he lists the different emotions and what frequency they're on. So you can't access joy if you're down here in shame. You know, there's all that kind of situation. And then we've got the relational element of the self, and that's the relationship with yourself and with other people. So you have to heal yourself on each of those levels. And I use that in terms of healing, but not just physically and emotionally. It's also kind of, if you're wanting to consciously create something in your life, you have to, you know, if you're wanting to release something, you release it with the physical all the way up. If you're wanting to call something in, you have to start from the energetic, and then you're bringing that down into the physical. So we have to have that awareness fully of all those different levels. But in terms of you were saying about the thoughts and how powerful that is, and how, you know, people can make themselves ill from their, you know, in my book I talk about, this was a very long time ago. I also wrote the book a couple of years ago, so I'm not going to get the details exactly spot on, but there was a case of this guy, I think in the 60s, and he was told that he had esophageal cancer and that he had 2 weeks to live. And he died 2 weeks later. Then they did an autopsy and he did not have esophageal cancer. But the belief he did is what killed him, potentially.
I have such a similar story that I would love to actually share with you and get your thoughts on, because my uncle had a very similar situation. He was told that, but not in this way of case, the belief killed him. I believe that he chose, like he was told that he had a brain tumour, he maybe had a year, 2 years max, and he sat down one day and said to my dad, his brother-in-law, I'm going this day. And he went.
And he did.
And at the time, you know, it's just, oh, you're fed up, it's the medication, it's whatever. But he was told he had so much longer, and the environment around him was very toxic. It was very uninhabitable, to be completely frank. And I think that he made that decision. And there's so many other people in my life who I've lost who could have been here a lot longer, but the external environment, exactly like you said, that hierarchy of needs wasn't met. So they made that decision of, I'm out, kind of thing. And it's just so interesting that that also works in the reverse. Like, I think we hear people choose when they've had enough, when they want to give up. And, you know, it's usually up here that does that. It's not actually what's going on in the body. But to hear that as a flip reverse just kind of brings me some reassurance of, intuitively, they made the right decision for them.
Yeah, like we're really getting into something here, because at some level we do get to choose.
Yeah,
we do get to choose. And, you know, I've heard it so many times within my clinic with people, in terms of, you know, loved ones dying, and, you know, I left the room and then they died, and I'd been there for days, or
they were holding on waiting for someone's visit.
In particular,
yeah.
Or, which is exactly what happened with my dad, they need permission.
Yeah.
Because they feel bad leaving you.
Yeah.
And, you know, the moment I actually said 5 weeks before, so my dad had a very rare brain disease. It took 10 years for him to die. He progressively lost all functioning until he was locked in his body, a bit like ALS, motor neurone.
Yeah.
He literally could only move an eyelid, but I know that he was fully consciously aware, because I remember one day I went in there and I said, I need to leave at 3:15. I've got to get the girls. And I'm notorious for being a little bit late. You know, I'll stay as long as I can with him. I used to visit him all the time. And he looked at me, looked at the clock, looked back at me, and he was telling me it was 3:15 and I needed to go. And this is a guy that, you know, he couldn't speak, he couldn't move,
Yeah.
and yet he fully knew, and he was still checking out, you know, that he
Yeah.
needed to go. But I knew that I said, he's going to die on Father's Day. And that was in about 5 weeks' time.
Yeah.
And when I went there on Father's Day, and I said, Dad, you didn't want to be this way. Like, please, it's time for you to go. And he did. He died that night.
Wow.
And he you know, he'd suffered for many years. And I truly believe it was that. And because I'd remembered from a client of mine years before, and then another one, that this situation kind of, they gave permission, and I thought, well, I'm just going to see, and it did work. But have you heard of Anita Moorjani?
No, I don't think so.
She wrote, another Hay House author. She wrote Dying to Be Me, and I was talking to her at an event last year, and she basically had cancer for about 4 years. And her husband was, you know, doting on her, trying to help her. She had tumours all throughout her body. She was in a coma, and she effectively died. Mm-hmm. And when she left her body, she was able to see everything. She could see that the consultant was speaking to her husband and saying, you know, this is it. You need to kind of get everybody here. And she went to this place and saw her dad. She's an Indian lady, and she kind of hadn't followed the protocol. So she felt, in terms of marriage and things like that, she felt like her dad was unhappy with her.
Okay.
She met her dad in this place, and her dad, all she could feel was love. And she was told that she could stay, as in die, or she could come back. And if she came back, she would recover very quickly, and that this was her kind of mission, to help people to understand this. And she looked down at her body with all the machinery,
Yeah.
and her husband sat there. Her husband was with her when she was telling me this. So, you know, her husband was sat there, and she felt like, he's been so supportive, I can't leave him. I don't want to leave him. So she came back to her body, started taking off the stuff, and obviously everybody was really surprised at what was happening. And I think it was a few weeks that all her tumours were gone.
Wow.
And that's what she's done ever since. She's gone around talking. So, you know, that's just one example. I have many others, but I actually truly believe that we have a choice. And I know my mum died just after my sister-in-law, a few weeks later. And my mum had dreams. She said she kept going to this place, and my granddad was there. And she was told, it's not your time yet. And little did she know, it actually was her time, but it was only a few weeks later.
Wow.
So there does seem to be this kind of sense of a predestined ending, but I truly believe we have many many timelines that we can take. So I do a lot of work shifting timelines.
Yes.
And when I was pregnant with my youngest daughter, so inadvertently, when I healed the tumour, so I'd been told I would never be able to have my own children. So because of I had endometriosis, I'd had quite a lot of laparoscopies, even at that young age. And because of the scarring from the endometriosis and the laparoscopies, and because of the tumour makes you infertile. So because of those two things, I was told by 2 different doctors that I wouldn't have my own children. But inadvertently, I healed that at the same time. I wasn't even aware of it, but I did. And when my eldest daughter was 3, that's when all the deaths started to happen. So 2 months into the pregnancy, my sister-in-law died. 3 months into the pregnancy, my mum died whilst looking after my daughter.
Oh my goodness.
My eyes water, I'm not getting upset. So she was literally babysitting my daughter. My dad came home, he'd been out for about an hour. And Maya was there with the phone in her hand crying, saying, I'm trying to get mummy. I can't get mummy, Nanny won't wake up. And my mum had a brain hemorrhage, and
I'm so sorry.
she died. Oh, thank you.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you, yeah.
It's really difficult to, when you kind of have this spiritual awareness and this beautiful gift that you've clearly got, how people find death really difficult. And it is really difficult. It's not, grief is so hard. And I've always felt like it's just, you love this person so much and then they're just not there for you to give that love to anymore. But how have you found peace in losing such important people around you in such really awful ways? How have you found that resolution?
I'm smiling because there are so many different answers to that question, and I'm thinking which is the most beneficial one to share. I think,
what's the one that feels right for you?
I think it's that knowing. So like I say, throughout my whole life, I have disconnected, reconnected, disconnected. You know, things have happened in order to bring me back onto the track, the spiritual track. So I like to deny these things exist, but I know. I actually do know. So, you know, there's a video out there of me doing mediumship, and even in there, it was a few years ago. Even in there, I'm like a demonstration. I'm like, you won't hear me saying the spiritual thing. You know, like I'm trying to like disown it. Well, 'cause I talk about energy, but not spirit. It was actually my dad that fully enabled me to step into that and to fully be at peace with death.
Yeah.
Because even after, so the night before my mum died, I actually had a vision of, I walked in the house. As I walked in, I looked into the living room, and that they had like this bureau with there was a picture of my mum, and she used to wear a crucifix. She'd taken it off and it was hanging over the picture. And in my mind, I said, out of nowhere, that's how it will look when she's dead. That's how it will look tomorrow when she's gone. And then next to it, I could see in the armchair, like almost like superimposed onto the armchair, almost like a hologram of my dad with his head in his hands, like crying. Then another part of me was like, what? How weird is that? Why on earth would you think such things?
What an intrusive thought to have.
Exactly.
Yes.
So then I went to bed, thought nothing of it, and blah, blah, blah. But I was also very protective of her before I'd gone out that evening as well. I was like, make sure you take a phone with you. So there was something being communicated that I wasn't fully consciously aware of, but I was also aware of at the same time. And then following her death, there were lots of situations that, again, I would try to dismiss. But actually, it was communication. It was her communicating with me after she died, like telling me where, for example, the address book would always be in that bureau. And we were at the hospital, and my dad said, oh, can you go and get he couldn't find it. I said, well, he said, it's not in the bureau. That's where it always is. And in my mind, I said, I'm thinking it's me at this point still. I said, oh, I think it's in the glove compartment of your car. I was like, why on earth would it be in the glove compartment of my car? Like, of all places.
Yes.
It was always in that place. It was quite thick. And that's exactly where it was. It was my mum telling me. Like, she was telling me where certain pieces of jewellery were. Not only that where they were, but they weren't even where they were supposed to be again. So somehow I had the necklace my dad wanted her to wear in the coffin, which was 3 hours away at my in-laws' house, in a box, in a bag, underneath a table. She told me.
And when she's telling you these things, does it come through to you like as your mum's voice is saying these things to you, or is it just like drops in as like a natural thought that you've had and you just follow it? Is that what that feels like? Because I've had similar experiences. And for me, it never feels like it's a specific person telling me. I just know it is.
Yeah.
And I can't explain it. It's not their voice. It's not even necessarily their face. It's just a really drop of clarity in my brain that's like, this is... And then without thinking, I say it or do it. Turns out that it was exactly that.
Yeah.
How does it show up for you?
It shows up in different ways. So I seem to have all the different Claires. So I could see where, for the necklace, for example, I could see where it was, but she was also telling me, and yes, it's not her voice as she sounded here.
Yes.
It's like the voice of knowing.
That is such a good way to describe it. And it sounds, I know like people who are really skeptical about this space, like they're just, oh, whatever, but that is exactly what it is. You just know.
It's not like your normal voice.
No.
But there's a profoundness to it that is different to the norm.
Completely.
So, so I was having all of these events and I would dismiss them because I was able to dismiss. I could find a reason. Coincidence is a very good one to throw in there, isn't it? Or synchronicity or whatever.
Yeah.
And I said to my dad after my mum had died, Actually, no, it was after my brother died. My brother died a few months after my mum. And again, I knew he was going to die too, but I'm not going to keep going on about similar stories, but that was,
I think
he
that
was
was
very
really
young.
important though, because you've had a very, from the outside, from like an external world, your life has been very traumatic. There's been a lot of trauma from a psychological perspective that you've had to go through and heal.
Yeah.
And having this other beautiful gift has maybe been why you've been able to heal.
Yes. However, you've got to be open to it.
Yeah.
And that's why I ended up having lots of chronic health conditions that I then needed to heal through connecting back in with them all. So it's not necessarily a gift. That means you have this amazing ability. It's effectively something you have to keep working at. You don't just heal yourself and stay better. You have to continue to look after yourself on all those levels. And if you don't, something else is going to come in to ensure that you do.
That's such a great way of saying it, because I think for someone like me who's very new to this, like I've always loved mediumship and spiritual, and I've loved it. I've just never allowed myself to feel it like in the first person, if that makes sense. And for that to be, because I don't feel gifted. I don't feel like I have a gift. I feel like I'm working at something and I'm exploring something and I'm experimenting with something. And I feel like that word, and I even used it with you.
You did, yeah.
That gift is, I can't tell you how much peace that actually gives me, knowing that it just makes me feel more confident in myself of like, it's not a gift. It's something that you know, you're not just given it.
It's a skill.
Yeah, it's a skill. It's a skill.
You have to
That's
tune.
what it is.
It's like tuning your frequency.
Exactly.
You have to be able to, you know, it's a bit like meditation. You know, that's not a gift.
No.
To be able to meditate,
Yes.
you have to train the mind to be able to do that.
And by using words like gift, we then make other people
unreachable.
Yeah, and then then everyone goes, well, I don't have that, so I'm just going to ignore it.
Yeah, but yet everyone does. Definitely.
Wow, that's so powerful. That's so powerful.
Because we have the power within us. So to come back to your question in terms of like death and coming to terms with it, for me, I spoke to it was after my brother died. We were sat in the living room of my dad was sat on that same chair that I saw him. And I was explaining all these things that had happened. And I was just like, I'm tired of it. I just need to know for sure. And so I said to him, Dad, you know, if you die before me, can we have a little pact that you will, if it doesn't harm you in any way, that you will do something, come back, show me somehow.
Validate it to you.
That, you know, so that I will know for sure, so I can stop this searching, or I wasn't even searching, I was
questioning,
dismissing.
Yeah.
So he promised it, and I made some little joke. I'm going like this because I've got the toilet roll here. You make the toilet roll move or something.
Yes,
I don't know. Don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was years before. Well, it wasn't years before, but it was actually the beginning of his illness, but we weren't aware of it. And then as his illness progressed, I reminded him, and I said, but obviously only if it's not going to harm you in any way.
Yeah.
And I also said at that point, but don't do the toilet roll thing. I think that's just really weird. You coming in when I'm on the toilet. But we never actually had a specific thing.
Yeah, like a song or like a, you know.
Yeah. So he had his work cut out for him.
Yeah. How am I going to prove this to her?
And he really did. He really, really did. So basically, he died, and I had lots of these events happening, and I was dismissing them again. So, for example, I would be driving in the car, and because of all the traumas, there'd been all of those deaths, I wouldn't play any music in the car. It would be silent.
Okay.
I just couldn't. There was just too much stimulation.
Yeah.
And I had like a digital radio, and I'd be saying things in my mind like about the psychic and the psychologist. No, I can't do that. How would that even work? Professional suicide, blah, blah, blah. This whole toing and froing. And then the radio turned on, and it was the Beatles, and it was the part of the song, "There will be an answer, let it be."
No jokes, I'm actually going to cry.
Let it be.
Wow.
I dismissed it.
Yeah.
There were a number of different times when the radio would respond to what I was thinking. So how could that be? So obviously I've got to dismiss that.
And so many people would say, that's just a coincidence.
Absolutely.
That's just an electrical glitch.
Yep.
And you just made something mean something that didn't. But actually everything can mean something.
Yep.
Even if it is something so insignificant, everything means something.
Well, every time it happened, it was literally responding to the thoughts that I was having.
And that was your dad?
That was my dad.
Wow.
But that's literally the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
Do you want me to really go into the
paranormal?
paranormal?
Yeah, please do. Please.
Where
So your dad you felt like your dad was coming to you through the radio, the Beatles, Let It Be. What a beautiful song as well. How lovely.
I know.
So what else was kind of happening?
Well, let me finish that part because I'll forget otherwise.
Yeah, please do.
Interestingly, at the funeral, so my dad was in the army. One of the army guys came up to me. I didn't know who he was. And out of nowhere said to me, what your dad didn't know about radio telecommunications, you didn't need to know. And I was like, huh? He said, oh, your dad helped me so much. He was like the expert on radio telecommunications. He helped me through my exams, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, interesting. I didn't know.
No, of course not.
I didn't know.
Wow.
So putting that in mind, well, of course he'd come to me through the radio.
That's what he knew how to do, right?
Yeah. Interesting,
wow,
right?
So interesting. I love it.
But again, that was literally the tip of the iceberg. So I'm discounting these radio situations, and I went to visit my dad in the Chapel of Rest. Mm-hmm. And just after my dad died, he met somebody else, and she was a bit of a witch. She was quite mean.
Okay.
Like, bear in mind, this man his brain is dying. She'd go, oh, you're brain dead. You are brain dead. And he couldn't speak. As it progressed, he couldn't form words, and there was a bit of jealousy there, I think. Mm-hmm. And she basically, I don't know, her and her daughter said something like, "Oh, I bet he'd be able to say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious if I wanted him to," which is like, why would you even say that when this poor man can't even speak properly?
And also, you are his child.
Exactly. And you know what? This is obviously when he's still alive. He said supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Obviously not like that.
That was always like his little middle finger, wasn't it?
That's exactly how I describe it.
Yeah.
So keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, okay.
Because I'd forgotten all about it until the day I was at the Chapel of Rest. So I'm standing there and I've got these papers. So basically, my mum and dad were together from the age of 16. She died at 56, so 40 years together. And they'd obviously gone through the whole of the army and things. And the new wife didn't like any of that. She didn't want anything to do with the army.
Okay.
She didn't want them coming to the funeral, etc. So anyway, after he died, I told this guy that was my dad's best friend in the army, who then, I didn't even know this was a thing on Facebook back then. He'd then put a message out.
Yes.
And I started getting, I'm not joking, hundreds of messages about my dad saying what an amazing guy he was and, condolences, etc. So I printed them out and I took them to the Chapel of Rest and I stood with my dad. Well, I didn't stand with my dad, but I stood over my dad.
Yeah.
And I read all of these messages to my dad. And I swear I could see a tear in his eye at some level. Anyway. When I went to leave, I said, Dad, remember what you said. I know stuff's been happening, but I still don't know that it's you.
Yeah.
Please show me, beyond.
Undeniably. Yeah.
Got into the car, and again, I'm dismissing this one. Got into the car. Both my daughters are in the car, and they'd been playing about with the phone.
Yeah.
And my daughter downloaded Mary Poppins. Out of nowhere, she just decided to download Mary Poppins. Didn't tell me. I got in the car turned on, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And then I'm like, where's that come from? And she said, oh, and it wasn't even, I don't even think it was the first track on there either. It just played because
wow.
I'm thinking, oh, well, okay, we're getting closer, but it's still kind of random.
Yes, could be easily explained if you were skeptical. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. So a few other things happened, we'd gone to the funeral. a few days before, and we were staying in a hotel. It was in Birmingham, and there's got the BBC studios there.
Yeah, the mailbox.
Yes, we stayed in the Malmaison there.
So nice.
Yeah,
sorry, I went to uni in Birmingham, so that's like a reference point.
Okay, cool. I lived there for 4 years in my teenage years. So we were going around the BBC studios, and we were messing about, like filming like news things, etc. And then that evening, actually no, it wasn't even that evening. It would have been two nights later. I got a message on Messenger through Facebook, and it was this guy who had asked me about the funeral details like a week or so before. And I got this message, ha ha ha, typical Tony. My dad was called Tony. Like, what is this? Anyway, somehow that video that had been taken days before, that was up in my reel, and I'd messaged other people since, had been sent to this guy. And I was like, oh, that's really weird. I don't know how it happened. And he went, everything happens for a reason. And I was like, okay, well.
Yeah, and kind of thing.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, he came up to me at the funeral, and he said, oh no, I'm skipping a bit. The morning of the funeral, I was staying at my cousin's, I'd had this dream.
Yeah.
My dad was with me, basically. I could feel him, he was hugging me. And in my mind, he said, I'm so sorry, I didn't realise it would turn out this way. Don't worry about the money or anything like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting anything, I didn't want anything.
Yes, yeah.
Don't worry about the money, nothing like that. I am always with you. I am here, I am always with you. This guy came up to me in the funeral, said, your dad is always with you. And I said, people say that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm still like, I said, oh, thank you. He went, no. And he like literally held my hand, no, your dad is always with you. And this is a guy from the army. I am a medium. Didn't I? I'm a medium, and your dad is with you. He's always going to be with you.
Wow.
Anyway, this is just, I'm leading up to the actual thing. So that evening, we went out for the evening of the funeral. We went out for an Indian meal after like the wake and everything with my dad's brothers. And so bear in mind, my brother's already died. So my brother's wife and my brother's son are at the table. My dad had asked my nephew if he could do the music for the funeral.
Okay.
And his name's Andrew. Andrew said, oh, I see they didn't play the Phil Collins track that Grandad wanted. And then my brother's wife said, but they played the Celine Dion track. I bet that was Roy, which is the woman that he married after my mum had died. And then in my mind, the voice said, no, that's the music we played at your mum's funeral. Like, My Heart Will Go On. And I didn't remember what music was at my mum's funeral. Like, I couldn't remember. So I says, oh, no, I think that's the music we played at my mum's funeral. And then we're in this Indian restaurant, and it's got Indian, like, Bhangra music playing. Yeah. All of a sudden, at that moment, a big table, we're all there, we're the only people in the restaurant. Da-da-da,
Stop it.
da-da-da-da.
Stop it.
Yeah, the pan pipes for Celine Dion, My Heart Will Go On, was kind of transposed over the Indian music, and it was for about 20 seconds or so. We all heard it, all of us, apart from my ex-husband now and my cousin's boyfriend. But everybody else at that table could hear this music superimposed over that. And it never played again. So it wasn't like some mishmash of, I don't know. It just never played. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, everybody heard that.
I love how Alice is building on, like, this is so amazing. You're like, yes,
we're
it's
still not there.
Yeah, this is it.
We're still not there.
Oh my God.
So back at my cousin's house in the evening, everyone's gone to bed, and I'm sat up with my cousin. And she sat in like an armchair, and I'm on the sofa, and I'm looking at her, and we're chatting. And I started to tell her lots of the paranormal things that have happened as I was growing up, and it was literally the moment I said, I feel like every time I've strayed away from like a spiritual path or a path of believing or knowing, something big has happened to pull me back on. It's like I'm meant to go down that path.
Oh my God, yeah.
Suddenly, I felt, I had an image of being back in the chapel of rest. I could feel that icy cold feeling, like being in a, you know, like a fridge.
Yeah.
Really cold, and all my hairs were on end. I was like, oh. So I said, that's really weird. It feels like my dad's here. And we weren't trying to do anything. We were just having a normal conversation.
Yeah.
And every time I said something, it was like he was answering me.
Wow.
Through this icy coldness.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went, look, and I got up and I went and I sat next to her. So she's here now, and I'm going, look. And she went, I can feel it. I can feel the cold. And then all of a sudden it was like the life was drained out of me, truly.
Wow.
Couldn't speak. And she came and she sat on the sofa with me. She came and sat in front of me on the sofa. And you could see my hair was moving. And I remember there was a cushion here, and it had like some thread, and the thread was moving. There was some kind of a breeze there. And I said, I think my dad's here. Because then I could speak again. I think my dad's here. And she was staring at me, and I was like, what? She said, I can see you, but I can also see Uncle Tony.
Wow.
She said, your jaw is different, your eyes are different. He literally, have you heard of transfiguration?
Yes, yeah.
I had like a spontaneous...
Now the hairs on my arms have stood up.
I had this spontaneous transfiguration where my dad...
embodied.
Me.
Wow.
And I literally, because bear in mind he couldn't speak, and what often I sense with people is how the person died.
Yeah.
So I was re-experiencing how it was for him.
Mm-hmm.
And we carried on kind of asking these questions, and he would be answering the questions. And then my cousin said, can you do this for me so that Amanda can see you on me? And it was a no. So we were doing this for some time, and it was obviously pretty like amazing, pretty out there. And then there was this kind of, we felt like someone was watching us. We had this kind of strange experience where we both felt a bit scared. So we decided like, let's just go to bed.
Take a break, yeah.
And that's not even what did it. That's not even what did it. So these are huge events, right?
Massive.
These are big things. They're witnessed by other people.
And they're those things that people go, there's no way that could be real.
No way. No, but there's no way it could be anything else.
Exactly. That's like, it's undeniable. And people go, to you, it's undeniable because you all saw it. But to skeptics, they go, there's no way. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's that undeniability. And it's, wow. Okay. So what happened
What was
next?
it? Yeah. So the next morning, I was talking to my cousin, and I was focused on the fact that the atmosphere changed, that it was like a bit scary. It felt a bit angry, actually. And I said to her, oh, I don't know, if that was my dad, or, which dad, if that was my dad, like, is he angry with me because of what's gone on with like Roy and blah, blah, blah. And she then went and had a shower. She came out of the shower and she said, I think your dad was just like talking to me in the shower, and he wants you to know, like, she didn't even know she could do any of this stuff. Like, she said, he wants you to know that your dad's your dad. Like, there's no, he loves you. Like, there's no. So then I'm in the shower. And I'm in the shower and I'm saying to myself, oh, wish my dad would come and talk to me. Like, oh, I can't, great that she had that, but I really wish she'd talk to me. And then I said, in my mind, as I'm chatting away to myself, oh no, that's just really weird. I don't want my dad to come and join, like, see me in the shower.
Yes, yeah.
And this is the moment. He said to me, I see you as you see me right now. It's not like that. It's just energy. And it was something about, I used the word profound earlier.
Yeah.
It was the profoundness, the simplicity. that
clicked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from that moment, I was like, this is it. This is what I have to do. I have to show people. I have to acknowledge it for myself. What else has to happen? I mean, really.
Yeah.
I've healed myself from tumours. Do you know what I mean? There's all this stuff that I've experienced.
Yeah.
Come on.
That isn't the everyday either. Like what you've been through in your life is not. That's not an average life. That's a pretty exceptional one. And to be still standing here is incredible. It's such a testament to you. But
thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I'm like, right, that's it. I have to.
This is my calling.
This is. I just have to step into it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely. And I think that is where so many of us get so disconnected, because we're kind of put on these paths of almost very similar to your story and my own story, in terms of this is the route to go down. It's educational, it's academic, it's go and get a big job in a big company and just be stable. And actually that disconnects us so much from what's going on in here. And that intuition, like the external noise gets so loud that you can't hear what's going on inside. Yeah. And I think the occasions where I've nothing to the intensity of what you've experienced, but I'm a lot earlier on in this journey, I can recognise how that's happened, having put my foot in now and seeing, oh wow, this is just more intense, more experiential version of where I'm at. But like you said, when you felt like you couldn't talk, I've had 2 situations now where I've been really open and like actively kind of listening, not doing anything, just listening in every room I go into, just listening. And I've had 2 experiences. Both have been during like the evening, where I've just been like going to bed, and I've felt so. I think I've been like in between sleep and consciousness, so not asleep.
The hypnagogic state.
Yes, and I have been paralysed in my own body. But I'm also not in my own body. I do not have the language to be able to describe it properly. But I know that is something happening to me. And it feels scary in the moment. Mm. But then something will drop in the next day of like complete clarity of like, maybe that was a message, or maybe that was an energy trying to connect. Like I said, I'm very early in this journey, but it feels profound enough to say it out loud.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yeah. And if you speak to a medical profession, they will tell you your mind's woken up when your body is paralysed in that kind of in between sleep state.
Yeah.
You speak to an astral projector, they'll tell you that you're kind of getting ready to astral project. You speak to, we all have these different
ways of
labels to describe the same phenomena, and it's what you choose to buy into. So, for example, as the psychic psychologist, I had a particular client who fully met the criteria of psychosis and delusional, thinking, and I told him, here, your experience is what you're saying meets the criteria for that. However, and it also meets the criteria of a spiritual awakening.
Yes.
And whichever route you go down is going to lead you down a certain timeline. This one, obviously, medication, probably, potentially hospitalisation, certainly long-term treatment, and, down a path. This one, well, where does that lead? And actually, he chose to go down this path. He then went and did his Reiki, he was writing a book, his life opened up and expanded just by having the choice of how he chose to interpret what was happening to him.
And that's exactly what we like. It's a choice, right? And then when we talk about manifestation and kind of timeline jumping and quantum leaping and kind of all these buzzwords that are really starting to come into the forefront of like the algorithms now, people really kind of embracing these spaces. What does manifestation mean to you? What does that look like to you? And how do we do it?
I don't see it as anything different to what I did in my early 20s when I healed my tumour.
Yeah.
The reason I was able to heal the tumour was because I didn't identify as somebody that had a brain tumour. The reason a year and a half ago I was able to heal, so I was taken into hospital with a suspected stroke. Listen to my language, suspected stroke. I don't say I had a stroke. I was taken into hospital with this, right? I was told it was grade 7 on the stroke scale. Bear in mind, my mum died at 56 from a stroke, and we've got all this huge family history. My uncle was 35, my brother was 36 with the heart. You know, there's massive history here. So it's very likely.
Significant medically for you, yeah.
Huge. And I was told it was grade 7, it would take 6 to 8 months to have long-term acute inpatient rehabilitation. And I chose not to identify with that. I chose to bring together my hierarchy of healing, my release and reprogramming method, which is also how you do manifestation, in order to help and heal myself on all those different levels of the self. I also had the lovely Gordon Smith. Do you know Gordon Smith?
Yeah.
He wrote the foreword to my book. He was sending healing. He had a Buddhist prayer group working with me. There was lots of stuff going on while I was still in hospital. This happened the day after I recorded my audiobook. And then 2 months later, my book was coming out. So I've been told 6 to 8 months before I'm kind of, you know, I couldn't literally lift a knife to feed myself.
And they were saying it would take you 6 to 8 months.
Long-term acute inpatient rehabilitation.
Wow.
And my book was coming out in 2 months' time. So that's scary, right?
Yeah, so you're thinking, shit.
Yeah, fuck.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking, right, well, I've really got to put my teachings to practice here.
Yeah, like now's the time.
It's now or never, right? So 6 to 8 weeks later, I was on stage with my book launch.
Stop it. Not 6 to 8 months, 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks.
Wow.
And that's why I choose to believe and know that when people talk of manifestation, they're focusing often on what they want to have in their life. Yeah. They don't necessarily think about the fact that manifestation actually is encompassing many elements, again, at every level of the self. How do you want to be? How do you want your body to be? How do you want to be living? What environment do you want to live in? What do you want to be feeling like? What do you want to be thinking? You know, all of these elements are related, but you need to also bring in the timeline. So the reason that a lot of people don't get what they want in terms of manifestation, well, there's a number of reasons, some of which is that we're striving, we're on that vibrational frequency where we can't actually access it. A bit like we were talking of mediumship earlier, you can't access anything beyond a certain emotion, but you can also not access. So when you're doing mediumship, you are expanding out into the vibrational frequency of yourself and beyond. So you need to be able to raise your frequency so that spirit can lower their frequency and you meet in the middle, medium in the middle. That's what you need to be able to do. And in terms of manifestation, if you are striving, I really want this, I need to have this in my life, or I'm really scared, I don't want that to happen, that's the focus, then you're not in the vibrational frequency of being able to generate anything or receive anything. And so you stay where you're at. And then, of course, over time, your thoughts you're not going to believe that you can have it, and blah, 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 blah.
And
it doesn't happen.
Crap, and everyone's just delusional, and because you haven't been able to access it yourself.
Yeah. Because you just don't have the
just
knowledge.
Haven't found the right key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with my lovely book for Hay House, I knew years in advance that I would have a book deal with Hay House, even before I was writing a book.
What was it about Hay House that you were like?
I didn't even really know anything about them.
So
isn't it weird? I actually
it?
knew when I was younger that I would write at least 2 books. There was 2 books that I saw, and which was really weird because at that time I wouldn't even read books. So I'm like, well, that's not real. Kind of, you know, that was dismissed. And I don't even know how I ended up writing the book. Somehow I found myself booking on a weekend writer's workshop in Birmingham.
Wow.
And I went to this writer's workshop just to find out about writing a book. And then I found out while I was there that they have this this competition, Hay House Book Writers Competition, where you can win a publishing deal with Hay House. And obviously I've only got a tiny following on social media because I didn't use social media at all. So everyone says you'll never get a book deal unless you've got a big following, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, well, this is how it's meant to happen. Interestingly, while I was there, I'd met this girl, she was sat next to me, and I started drawing the cover of my book just like did this, the green and the gold, which are my kind of colours.
Yes.
I didn't have any of this set up, by the way. This wasn't, they weren't my brand colours.
No, yeah, it wasn't planned, yeah.
I started in and I drew this, had this triangle and I had green here, And then on the stage, Jessica Huey walked on with her book. I'd just drawn her book cover. No, I didn't know who she was. I didn't know her book, nothing. I hadn't seen her book. I was drawing my book cover, but it was actually her book cover. Yeah. She was like, oh my God, you've just drawn her book. And I was like, oh, well, I know, but I thought it was mine.
Yes, yeah.
Very strange. Anyway, while I was sat there, I looked around and I just knew that I was going to win the competition, but I also knew it wasn't that one. It was the next one.
Okay.
So I knew I had to enter the next one. You could only enter if you'd gone to it. So then I booked to go to Edinburgh, which was the next one. And then COVID hit and it was cancelled.
Okay.
And then it got switched online. So it was the first online writers' workshop where I think there were like 1,000 entrants or something, like a massive amount, not just the few people that were in the room.
The world shut down, yeah.
And I did a post on social media and I did this amazing book proposal and I was like showing it off and I put this like emoji thing with a number 1 on it saying that I was going to win it because I knew that that was the one I was meant to enter because that's the one I was going to win.
Yeah.
So I entered it and I was so cocky and confident, right, that I researched, because everyone was working from home.
Yeah.
I researched the managing director of Hay House to find out where she lived.
Love this.
I'm
so here for this.
To find out the area code of where she lived because I knew she'd be phoning me from home. Because I don't answer the phone if I don't know who it is.
Of course, yeah. If it's like an unrecognisable number, you just don't, do you? You just think, oh, someone calling me about rubbish. Yeah.
So it's the day of the announcement of who's won the Hay House Writers' Workshop.
You already know what area code's going to call you?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm in the car with my daughters, driving for a meal to celebrate the fact that I've won. Pull into the car park. The phone number comes up. I said to the girls, this is the managing director of Hay House. She's going to tell me I've won the competition. Pick the phone up. Hi, is that Amanda? Yeah, is that Michelle?
Stop it.
Promise you.
Do you know what though? Like that is, and to the outside world, that is where I think, and we hear this a lot in manifestation spaces around like delusional thinking. But actually, that's not delusional thinking. That is knowing.
I knew.
That's not you knew.
And it's not even like I wanted it. Do you know?
Yeah.
What I mean? And that's the difference. That's where I'm coming to. So we don't identify with something we want to release, and we don't even really fully identify with something we want to bring in.
Yeah.
We have to go beyond it. So for me, I wasn't focused on winning the competition. So that's not what I actively wanted to because that's what often we'll do. We'll think, I don't know.
I want a book deal, therefore.
Then you go to winning the competition.
Yeah.
No, I went to me on stage with my book at a Hay House event because for me to be on that stage with my book at a Hay House event, I would have already won the competition. So the competition didn't even matter.
Yes.
That wasn't my focus at all. There was no emotional charge to winning that competition. That was just a stepping stone.
So interesting. And I think when you are wanting to manifest something, like, you know, you've seen the vision of what you want in your head, you're standing on stage, you've got the book, you haven't manifested winning the book competition, but if you hadn't have won it, how do you then hold the not collapse back into like it just doesn't work? Is it because it was never meant for you in the first place?
Okay, so I believe that we have certain events along our timeline that we're meant to experience.
Okay.
So for example, when I met my husband, I said to my best friend, one of my best friends at the time, she knew him longer than I did. In 10 years' time, he's going to cheat on me with a girl that will look like I did when he met me. And she's going to be 21 and she's going to live in Hampton Court. So you would think, as somebody, I've had precognitive dreams my whole life. Everything that's always come true, that kind of different dream. You would think, as a logical woman, why would you stay with him if you knew that? Because I also knew I was meant to experience that. Remember, I knew from a young age I was going to have lots of suffering, and I also knew I was meant to have children with him.
Yeah.
10 years' time, I'd forgotten about it then after that.
Of course,
10 years' time, cheated on me with a girl that looked like I did when he met me. She worked in Hampton Court, and she lived in East Molesey, which is just down the road. How would I even know that? How would I even know that? So certain things you're meant to experience, and if you can change it, but the lesson beneath it still has to be learnt. So I could have left him. I could have not had that relationship with him, but you can be sure that whatever I needed to learn was going to happen one way or another.
So if we flip that on its head and we say you can manifest anything, you can choose it, whatever,
No.
you actually, that's not the point, is it?
I don't think you can manifest anything.
No, because if you'd have so you had that vision of this is going to happen to me, and if you could manifest anything, you wouldn't have put yourself through that.
I have an awareness of been able to see down timelines since I was very young.
Okay.
So like I said, I had an awareness that I was meant to write books, didn't know what they were, didn't really think anything of it, didn't care less. So that was clearly one of the significant events that were meant to happen in my life, to enable me to get out into the world, to do what I'm meant to do, which is to teach people all around the world that they have the power within to help and heal themselves. I needed that book to be a part of that, to give these teachings, because otherwise, I'd probably still be working in my clinic, working with one person and then another and then another.
Yeah,
something had to shift in order for me to go global, and that helped me to do that.
Wow.
Now, if that wasn't part of it, if somebody else, let's say now, I teach you to do exactly what I did.
Yes, so I want a book deal. I'm going to do what you've done to get a book deal.
Yeah. You're not necessarily going to get a book deal.
No. Because it's not necessarily what's meant for me. It's not what's...
The way I see it is, we have a blueprint.
Yes.
And that blueprint contains the vibrational frequency for me to get that book deal, but maybe not you.
Yeah.
So when people talk about manifestation, you can manifest anything you want, it's not true.
Wow.
But you can manifest anything that you choose to focus on that is in alignment with your current timeline. And if so you can shift your timeline and then create something from that new timeline. I started having precognitive dreams that during the birth, either myself or my daughter were going to die. So this is the timeline stuff, and this relates to the manifestation in a similar way. When you're saying what's meant for you, what's not meant for you. In the current place that I started to have the same dream repeatedly, and it had the same vividness that happens with precognitive dreams. They're slightly different to your normal dream, and they stay with you. And this dream stayed with me. And what would happen, I'd get to a particular part of the delivery, and this this midwife would walk in. I didn't know her. She wasn't somebody that I was aware of in my everyday. She had a name badge, Kate Woolger. It's like it emblazons on your mind. She would walk in, and that would be the moment where one of us died. And it never ended, so I never knew who would die. So the psychologist in me would say, well, of course, you've just lost your mum, you've lost these really significant people, and boom, 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 during the pregnancy, all these deaths. Of course you're going to start having dreams of one of you dying. The fear of that, the trauma, it's going to play out in your dreams. The psychic in me is like, you've had psychic dreams, precognitive dreams your whole life, and they always come true. So this is going to happen. So like, how can I reconcile those two parts of me?
Yeah.
And it's fearful, right?
I was just about to say, you're terrified.
I'm giving birth. You know what's coming next.
Oh my God.
Giving birth comes to the point where I have to push. In walks Kate Woolger, standing exactly where she was in my dream. I mean, literally, I couldn't have staged it right if I was the director of my life. She literally, on cue, push the head out and there's no sound. And in that moment, I died, like literally, not physically, but
of course, as a mum, I can, yeah.
And I've got all these things going on, like I just feel bereft and broken, and I've now got to live the rest of my life, not only like losing my family, but I've now lost a child in childbirth too. And then that could have been the story.
Yeah.
However, rolling back time, I took charge of what was happening, and I chose to believe that the dreams were telling me something, in that I needed to look at what was happening in my life, because that was a potential outcome. Where I was at, that was a potential outcome. Did I want that outcome? Absolutely not. And so what I did, I consciously constructed a timeline where we both survived.
Wow.
Again and again and again and again and again. Put everything into that timeline. And then she cried.
Wow.
We both survived.
Thank goodness.
And then 9 weeks later, my brother died. So on that timeline,
yeah.
you see? So you don't necessarily get what you want in one timeline, but you don't necessarily know what you're going to get in another one either.
And do you think, because I hear a lot of people who are, really advanced, like, people like Joe Dispenza, who are really advanced into manifestation and, that kind of work, saying that if you want to manifest something and it's not right for you, or it's not meant to be, you're not meant to have that, it's for a reason. And that's why we have to be so open-minded about opportunities that come in and different, and just you try not to control the how so much.
Yeah.
Because when we do, like you said, we don't know what else is in that timeline that we're stepping into. So, wow.
Yeah.
This is just crazy.
Isn't it?
But also makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense as well in how we can consciously create our own lives. And at any point, I think it makes you feel powerful to think, I can say no to this if I want to.
Yeah.
And I can consciously choose a different path.
And whether that's in the positive, I say no to feeling stagnant in bed, in pain.
Yes.
Or whether it's I say no to, so you can choose either way. You're choosing whether you are consciously aware of it or not.
Yeah.
You are making choices each and every moment of each and every day, which means you can begin again each and every moment of each and every day.
Yeah.
You just make that conscious choice and actively work on every single level of the self, and you can make your life something different.
And I spoke about this recently with Dr. Lalita Siglani, and we were saying that the world has been so masculine, energy driven, that we've lost the divine feminine, which when I look at the psychic psychologist, and you might have a different interpretation of this, the psychic is that divine vision and flow and intuition, and the masculine is the structure, the academia, the execution of theory.
Well, that's the grounding, and then again it's with the levels of self, and then it goes up. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we're kind of taught to look outside of ourselves.
Yes,
we're taught to seek. People are desperately seeking solutions outside of themselves.
It's not landing. The manifestation thing is not landing for me. It used to, but it doesn't now.
No.
And I think it's because I'm more conscious, more aware. I'm having my own transformation journey with this, in real time. And I actually did a video where I sort of said, manifestation has literally like gaslit everyone into thinking something's one thing when it's actually something different. And it feels like, I know this sounds so cynical, but it does just feel like a bit of a scam sometimes when I sit and I'm like, this is not it.
Well, again, you're looking outside of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to look to you because you're going to tell me how I can manifest whatever I want to manifest in my life.
Yes.
No, look within.
How has your life changed since you've let it in and accepted these skills and worked really hard on them and grown them and been so committed to them? How has your life changed?
I mean,
when you think about you back doing your HR, it was HR, was it doing your HR job at Reuters to your life now?
Oh, I'm a completely different person. I am literally a completely different person.
Yeah.
But I mean, I still have my, again, a bit like I'm saying you have to work at it to stay well. I have to work on it to keep myself believing in it.
Yeah.
Because I've just come back from Chile. I've just been in Chile for 5 weeks.
Wow.
I've become a shaman.
I'd love to go there.
Yeah, amazing. Have you heard of Alberto Villoldo?
Yes, yeah.
So his shamanic energy medicine practitioner training, 28 days, 300 hours. Up at like 6:15, not back to your room till 10. Literally every day for 28 days.
So I want to be you when I grow up. If I ever grow up, I want to be you. That sounds absolutely incredible.
But even on there, I'm like, entities? No, I'm not into that.
Yes.
It only exists for you. This was me literally. If you'd have spoken to me last year, I'd be saying to you, it only exists for you if you believe in it. Because otherwise you're not on that for, it doesn't have to exist for you. Like, let's just say entities or blah, blah, blah.
And a lot of the language is hard to connect to.
But 2 of the people there on the course, one of them had this experience since they were very young, where they could never satiate themselves. They always needed to eat and eat and eat, and they always felt hungry, and they would always be sick.
Okay.
Like something they'd had, and they'd never been able to get it treated. Worked with one of the other people who had like done this extraction of this entity.
Yeah.
That I don't believe in.
Yeah.
The other woman got it for 2 days.
What? The one who extracted it
hadn't done it properly.
And she then
absorbed
had healed that person. But
yes. So this person's healed. She's telling everyone in the group she's healed.
And she's going, well, I'm fucking not.
And then she's like, actually, can someone help me? Because since I've done that, this is happening to me.
Wow.
But more than that,
we have to protect our energy so much?
Yeah. So I've never believed in that either. It's all this like fear mongering.
Yes. Do you feel more healed in this part of your life than you ever have before?
No,
or do
I
you
think
feel like
layers.
It's a conscious journey that we have to work at right up until the day we die?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that word healed, I don't think really, it's a continuum. It's a continuous process. Completely. Yeah, and you heal from one thing and then it comes up again, or something else comes. So I healed myself from a pituitary tumour at 22 when I was so it was after the death, so I probably would have been about 30. I need to look it up, probably about 30. I ended up with 2 pituitary tumours, one at the front and one at the back, after all the deaths and all the stuff that had gone on, because I wasn't there for myself. I didn't have the time. There were so many things happening. I was totally disconnected from myself. That there it was on the MRI. It's come back and you've got one on the front and the back. So that shows me again, there's all these signs, because I talk about,
when you're out of the misalignment.
Our life mirrors back to us something a lesson we're needing to learn. So we talk about the different clairs, but it's more than that. Your life is literally teaching you, and it comes out in one way or another. So my legs would give way because I couldn't carry anymore after the deaths. My husband went properly deaf in one ear because he didn't want to listen to what I had to say when I was confronting him about cheating on me. So many different things.
That it's not funny, but I love it.
Isn't it?
Serves him right.
It's called a dead ear.
Serves him right.
It's still to this day like that. I had a client come to me just after my brother died. My brother was in hospital when he died, and he shouldn't have died. Like and I always felt like it was an accident. And I was going to look into it, and there was like negligence, etc., etc. First day back at work, first new client came to me because his brother, listen, this is like life reflecting back. His brother had died, and he was trying to sort like stuff with the hospital and with the NHS and with literally anyone you could imagine to do with his death, because he felt that they'd been negligent and that caused the death. He came to me, this is not a spiritual thing, this is literally a reflection of what I needed to learn. He came to me to show me not to go down that road, because do you know what happened to him?
Oh God, what?
Yeah, I knew that he was going to get lung cancer. So lungs is all to do with grief and unexpressed emotions. somehow I knew, and he started coughing in the session. And I obviously, I'm not going to say, I said to him, I think maybe like you should go to the GP about that. He went to the GP, they gave him an inhaler. I said, I'm really not sure that that's actually, you need to go back. Went to the GP, went back, got referred to a scan, found out he had lung cancer, which then progressed into brain. It was very quick, progressed into brain cancer. I then used to start going to his house. And it was very much the life showing me, this is what could happen if you go down that timeline.
Yeah.
Don't go there, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And my brother was saying it to me as well. And any time I was on a course, you know, when you do readings for each other?
Yes, yeah.
Everyone would say, you've got a brother, he died from an accident. And they didn't
So your
know
brother
how.
always came through?
Yeah.
Wow. That's so...
So your life is teaching you, your body's teaching you, your emotions, your thoughts. It's all teaching you. It's reflecting back something you're needing to know or acknowledge that you're pushing away or not facing or unaware of.
And I think we just have to be brave enough to listen. That feels like something that's been really apparent for me recently, is like, just be brave enough to listen and not feel like you have to force, speak. Just listen.
An awareness of itself.
Listen to your body, listen to your brain, your thoughts, your emotions, because like we're being spoken to all the time, and I feel like that's the guide. Is this how we heal and unify humanity?
It's how we evolve. This is how we are evolving.
Yeah.
And it's what needs to happen.
I completely agree. Thank you so much. I feel like I have no idea what the time is, but I feel like this has just been the best conversation. You have so much wisdom to bring the world, and I'm so grateful for you coming today.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you for
loved
having
it.
me.